Well, Ryan, we're back with another competitive game. It's a very different team that we're seeing here in this Gold Cup as opposed to the games that we saw at the Nations League. The first game up in the group stage is going to be against Haiti. We also got Martinique and Canada. That's the big one that we're going to be talking about mostly in the group stage coming up here. But when you just look at the squad, a very MLS heavy based 11, a couple younger players coming over from Europe, but we don't necessarily have the big guns here.
Yeah, and it's one thing to get excited about, seeing all these different faces, but fact of the matter is, I'm gonna start up this episode with this segment with some negativity, man. I mean, last time we got excited about seeing these new faces, they failed to qualify for the Olympics. So, obviously we got a more experienced squad here. It's not all under 23, but I think this squad has a lot to prove because we know what we're capable of with our best squad, our big hitters, our Christian Pulisic, Gio Reyna. But what is our bench capable of? What are our reserves capable of? It's easy for me as a United States fan to say, oh my gosh, Giaci, Zardes, Paulo Arriola, like these guys are ballers. They're gonna take this Gold Cup by the scruff of the neck. But another part of me has to be realistic and say that these guys got stuff to prove, in competitive international football. So, a lot of MLS guys in here, a lot of guys that, are on very few caps, young guys, experienced guys. It's a good mix. So it'll be interesting to see how they all mesh together and if they're capable of pulling it out like our experienced team did.
And the other teams seem to be taking this a lot more seriously in this competition. Obviously, when you look at Mexico's squad, they brought a guy like Irving Lozano, so Chucky's going to be playing here. They brought Hector Herrera, Jesus Corona. They're probably pissed off about that loss. We know they're not happy about how that Nations League ended. Obviously, we loved it. They hated it. Maybe they want to get a little bit of revenge in this. Costa Rica's bringing their A game outside of Keylor Navas. Jamaica's bringing Leon Bailey and those guys. So is this team capable of making a run in the Gold Cup? Is the expectation to make it to the final? Yes. However, is it necessarily win or bust? I don't think so, because the reality is this is not our best team. And I think a lot of these players still lack that experience in big games. And this is going to help them do that. And they're going to be able to prove to Gregg Berhalter and the rest of the country, do they deserve to be a part of that qualifying squad? And should they be in contention for 2022?
Yeah. And, as you mentioned, I don't think that, losing this competition by any means is the end of the world. However, should we be winning this competition? We should be walking this competition, in my opinion. I mean, Mexico is probably the strongest opponent that will play. And even they're not at their strongest. They're bringing in some good guys, but so are we. So I think we should, theoretically, if all these guys are playing on their A game, we should be walking this competition. But will we be is going to be a different story. I mean, it's going to be good for a lot of the young guys to get their chance and say to Gregg Berhalter, introduce themselves, get onto the scene. But I think we still should, look to challenge for this trophy. I think that should be the priority, because I don't want to go from, having one of the best games in U.S. soccer history, winning a trophy against Mexico, to, crashing out and being an embarrassment like, we have in years past. I don't think this needs to. We can't be looking at each cup as as a tryout for players. I think if these players are being called up, they need to look to try and win. So that's I'm putting a lot of pressure on these guys.
Yeah, and let's go focus a little bit more group by group on the squad exactly. We'll start with the goalkeepers. Brad Guzan back in the squad. Obviously, he's been playing in a part of the national team. He was Tim Howard's number 2 for years and years and years. Went through a little bit of period of time where he was the number 1. He's been playing pretty well with Atlanta United. You got Son Johnson from New York City FC, and then Matt Turner, who I think is probably going to be the guy who's going to be the number 1 going into this. Sean Johnson, I think, is a step below Turner at the moment. And then Brad Guzan, I think, is just a part of the squad to be a guy that has been there, has done it, has competed at this. He's won this tournament. He's been a part of squads that have done well. Like I said, they've won it. And he's just going to be that guy to try and help all these young players be like ready to go and actually understand what it takes to win at this level.
Yeah, and that's it's good to see Brad Guzan come in for exactly that reason, because he has that experience, and I think he'll have a good influence on at least the goalkeepers union and probably a lot of the players around him. I just wish we saw a little bit more of that, in the defenders and midfielders category, and especially forwards, having a little bit sort of experience in big competitions. We have Sebastian Lletget, who just won the Nations League with our, first team, our strongest team, but it'll be, it's I think there's going to be a big role for Brad Guzan to play that's not on the field. So I think it's great to see him here, but ultimately you're right.
Would you have preferred to see David Ochoa from Real Salt Lake? Because we saw what he did in the Olympic tournaments. He was pretty good outside of the one mistake that he made that really ended up costing things. He was a part of the Nations League squad, which maybe is why he wasn't selected, and that he just needs to get back to Real Salt Lake and not be spending too much time away from them. But when you get the counteractive to having an older head in the squad that's just there for his experience and to try and be a leader, is you're taking away the experience of being at a tournament from a younger player who might gain from it.
Yeah, and that's that's where the question comes in. Who why we need Sean Johnson there, I guess, because I think Ochoa had a great run with.
I think Sean Johnson's probably a little bit ahead, at least the way he's performed in MLS, of David Ochoa. A little bit more experienced, and I think maybe if Matt Turner does go down, I think Sean Johnson would be better suited to step in and be that number one if something happens to Matt Turner, or maybe he even starts over Matt Turner. We don't really know, obviously, what Gregg's thinking.
Well, I think that's why Brad Guzan is there. Yeah, I mean, if Matt Turner is to go down, I think Brad Guzan has what it takes to step in as that number two. However, I don't think that we necessarily should be burning another spot up for an older goalkeeper when we have Ochoa, who had a great tournament, who deserves more shots with the national team. I mean, obviously he'll get more shots in the future, but not to be too picky, but it would be cool to see, now that you mention it, see Ochoa up at another tournament.
Moving on to the defense, I think for me it's pretty clear who the four guys are going to be. Just looking at the names on the list, you got George Bello from Atlanta United, Reggie Cannon from Boavista, Shaq Moore makes his return playing over in Spain, Donovan Pines, Miles Robinson, James Sands, Sam Vines, and Walker Zimmerman. I think for me, when you just look at the list, the back four is pretty glaring at the moment. Reggie Cannon obviously will be that right back. I think Sam Vines steps in to that left back role. He was one of the bright spots from that Olympic qualifying tournament. He's played pretty well when he's played for the senior team. Walker Zimmerman, I think, is going to be the guy that's going to have to be the leader of that back line. He's been fantastic in MLS. We've seen him walk in and play for the senior national team on numerous times. He played in the previous friendly after Miazga left the squad. And then I think it's probably going to be Miles Robinson, who's had a pretty good season for Atlanta United.
Yeah, I think our defense looks like it could have some quality to it. I think the four starters will probably get on pretty well. They look like they can complement each other well. I think too that there will be a lot of rotation, at least from what the what the games are offering. I mean, when we're going against Haiti, Martinique, I don't think we necessarily need to play our best back four, but I think this back four should offer us a decent amount of stability going up against Mexico or Costa Rica or someone like that. But it's for these other guys, I don't think we have a lot of depth in defense. So it'll be interesting to see who plays against Martinique or who plays against Haiti.
I think Walker Zimmerman is definitely going to be the leader of this back four. I think he's the nailed-on starter. Maybe they try and mix things up at center back next to him, depending on the opponent. And we're talking about Haiti and Martinique. Those should be games that this team walks the floor with. I mean, player for player wise, this team is just on a whole other level. Canada will be more of a challenge, but still, this team is good enough and should be beating Canada. But I'm thinking about Reggie Cannon. This could be a showcase for him. Maybe that's why he may have been so excited to play this game, because for people who are listening in podcast form, we just talked about Reggie Cannon's possible moves to different Portuguese teams or over to France. A lot of European clubs are interested in him. For YouTube viewers, guys can go check out that transfer video that we just recorded, talking about all the transfer rumors and all the confirmed stuff like Caden Clark and Conrad De La Fuente. Back to Reggie Cannon. This could be another showcase for him to those bigger European clubs who are going to be like, oh, hey, this guy's dominating. He's creating a lot of good chances. I think is a real option that he's going to be bombing down that right wing, whipping in crosses against Haiti and Martinique, Canada, and these other games where he's going to create a lot of chances and probably going to give himself a couple assists.
Oh, yeah. I think, that's a good point to bring up, because I think, out of the list of defenders here, he looks like he's going to be, the most promising, the most effective going forward. So I think this is going to be a huge tournament, and potentially being one of our main men in the starting 11. I mean, he can have a huge impact for this team. Especially even in the big games, he's going to be a guy that we're looking towards to come up big, because, he has that experience now. I mean, not much experience, but, he's cemented his name into potentially our best 11.
He's played in big games. Obviously, he played in that Nations League. He's played in competitive games before. So, yeah, he's a very young player, still early in his 20s, but he's one of the more experienced teams alongside Walker Zimmerman. The two of them are the most experienced defenders. Shaq Moore, very athletic guy. We're seeing him come back from Tenerife, but so he's an exciting player to see what he does, maybe bombing down that right wing at that right back role, very attacking, or even that left back role. We've seen him play that role as well. So he's an exciting player to see. But I think we probably should move on to the midfield. The midfield, it seems like it's a little bit more of an experienced group. Sebastian Lletget obviously found his way into the squad. He's just always going to be there. He's probably going to be starting every game, and I think he probably has to, based on who we have around him, and his experience I think is really going to help him. Jackson Ewell's there, Kellen Acosta, Christian Roldan makes his return, Eric Williamson, and then the talented youngster Gianluca Busio.
Yeah, and my first impression of that midfield list is that it looks pretty defensive. I'm not going to lie. It doesn't look like we have huge attacking options coming out of the midfield. I mean, so it's when you think about who our nailed on best three are, we probably are going to go with Kellen Acosta, Roldan or Ewell, and then Sebastian Lletget. And I think that doesn't offer too much going forward. So in those smaller games, against Haiti, against Martinique, I think that'll be a great opportunity for someone more attacking minded like Busio to come in and, put his mark on the game. And because we're gonna need someone to have that attacking instinct and come up big. So I think that's going to be an awesome opportunity if he does get the opportunity in one of these games. He's going to be put in the position to be a very effective player in a midfield that otherwise may be defensive. He's going to be a big attacking outlook.
And Jackson Ewell, we've talked a lot about on this show, what he does well, what he doesn't do well. I think these first couple of games really suit Jackson Ewell. The Gold Cup is a competition that Jackson Ewell can dominate. We know he's a very good ball distributor, not the best in terms of defensively. He's not very mobile, doesn't move well. However, when he has the ball at his feet, he can dictate the play of the game, and I think he's going to be able to dominate a team like Haiti and a team like Martinique and even Canada, where we are going to dominate the possession. Obviously, Gianluca Busio is the guy we all want to see do it. Very talented kid, linked to a bunch of Italian teams. He's performed very well in MLS this season, but even he's not that big of a goal threat. Only 2 goals and 2 assists in his 13 games with Sporting Kansas City. Very disappointed not to see Caden Clark in this team. He was coming off a bit of an injury at the end of June, where it caused him to miss a couple of MLS games. So I think he would have been the perfect guy to be in this squad right now. But just being that he's much more an attacking midfield role. But we also, looking at the forwards, a lot of it's probably going to be created coming down those wings.
Yeah, and then moving forward to those wingers, onto the forwards, moving forward to the forwards. It's
a little bit of a tongue twister.
Right? It's an interesting batch up here because I think it's a pretty promising batch too, assuming that they are able to capitalize on what we're expecting of them. I mean, you talk about Giaci, Zardes, Paul Arriola, Daryl DK. These are guys that, on paper, I think that is fantastic front three going into these games. But um, question is, are they going to have the output? Are they going to, find the goal? This is something that Giaci Zardes has struggled through his career. Ariola's done great every time he's come into the national team. So I'm really, really excited to see how he performs coming back here.
Yeah, he's coming off that injury that he
of course,
suffered
and I
back
think
with
sorry, I
Swansea.
just think these names look good, but it's going to be, we don't have a a nailed down goal scorer. There's no goal scorer or creative player up there. So it's gonna one of these guys is gonna have to step up and make a name for themselves. There's no Pulisic, there's no Reina, there's no Josie Altador. So one of these guys is gonna have to be big.
That's a big hole. I think the guy that's gonna have to step up is Daryl DK. That's the guy I want to see at that number 9 role. The goals have just been flowing from him. We saw him score his first national team goal in the friendly against Costa Rica. He's been scoring goals consistently since he's come back in MLS. We know how great he was over at Barnsley in the championship. I think this could be his time to shine and to show Gregg, like, hey, I should be in contention to be starting those games in World Cup qualifying. Also, Matthew Hoppe. We're going to see him get his first competitive game action for the national team. Very exciting player. This could be an opportunity for him to show Gregg and to show European clubs that he shouldn't be playing in the Bundesliga 2 next season with Schalke. Maybe he goes and jumps back up to another Bundesliga team. And he also could show Gregg that, hey, I should be in the squad for those games too.
Yeah, I think a lot of these options look really exciting. So, I mean,
Joe Aquini, we didn't talk about him. When he played for the national team, he stepped in and scored some goals. Jonathan Lewis has looked promising at times.
Yeah, so I think all of these guys should be looking at this opportunity here to make a big name for themselves, because there's no real standout player in this attacking line. There's all of these guys should be looking and saying, I could be that guy that puts their name on the poster boy of this tournament, and I would love to see that, especially from Daryl DK. I think this could be the main chance that he gets to be, our main number 9 going into bigger games. So it'll be super cool if he gets that and kills it.
Yeah, and we talk about him possibly being Josie Altador 2.0. Let's talk about Josie Altador. He was in the provisional squad. Obviously, a lot of us know he hasn't had a lot of game time. He's almost been frozen out of that Toronto FC team. Doesn't see eye to eye with the manager. He's been injured so often. And when you think about it, this tournament was almost going to be a reverse of how it usually goes in international football. Usually you perform at your club and then get selected for the national team. Almost looked like it might have been a thing where, like, oh, Josie Altador, he might be fit. Let's get him into the national team and let's get him playing for a different club. Let's give him that move to the other MLS team or that move to Mexico that has been rumored, and try and get him going, because he is the only proven goal scorer at the number 9 position in the player pool that we have right now. And obviously he's had his injury issues, but when he's been healthy, especially for the national team, he's performed.
Yeah, and it brings a question mark if with all these attacking options that we have. Almost every episode we talk about who our next number 9 is going to be, and is this Gregg's way of saying that we've moved on to what our new number 9 options are?
I genuinely don't think so.
Yeah.
Being that he was in the provisional squad and he's kind of training on his own right now, if he starts playing club football, I think Josie Altador walks into the squad without a doubt. And that's probably not a popular opinion. I think a lot of U.S. fans want to move on from the Josie Altador, Michael Bradley type era. But the reality is, this isn't central midfield where we have a lot of other options playing at the top level, scoring goals, playing really well like we have with Weston McKennie, Yunus Musa, Tyler Adams. This is the striker position, and our best options haven't quite necessarily been scoring goals. We see Josh Sargent right now. He's probably first choice. We saw him be the first choice in Nations League. He hasn't been scoring goals consistently. Obviously, he does a lot of good things, but who knows? Daryl DK is still fresh on the, fresh meat in this national team, if you want to call it like that. Giaci Zardes has had his struggles. He's played well recently for the national team. He had a great season, but I think you'd be foolish to say that Giaci Zardes is the same quality and the same talent of a player like Josie Altador. He doesn't offer the same things that Josie offers, especially with that physical presence and the way of Josie's hold-up play.
Yeah, and I think, obviously I agree with you. I think, Josie is our best bet overall. And I think that he would –
if he's healthy. It's just if he's healthy or not. And it's heartbreaking to see because, I mean, if he's healthy, could he end up as the all-time leading scorer? I think absolutely. But the problem is it seems he's ready to come back. We saw him in the squad for those MLS friendlies a couple months back, gets hurt. He looks like he might be in this squad, suffers another little bit of an injury knock. And it's disappointing because we know what he can do. And even just to have him as an option or to have in the squad would be huge because we don't have anyone else who has scored goals consistently in CONCACAF.
Yeah, and so, but that that brings up the question as I was hinting at earlier. If this potentially may be Gregg Berhalter moving on, if Daryl DK or if Giaci Zardes has a excellent tournament, if they put if they have 4 or 5 goals, whatever.
I don't think the end of Josie Altador is done just from this tournament. I think if Daryl DK has a great tournament, gets a move over to the Premier League and just starts banging goals in like he's been doing as of late, I think Daryl DK is the guy that we could move on, as that finale thing from Josie Altador. Strictly because he does a lot of the same things that Josie does well. Giaci Zardes and Josie Altador, like we said, Giaci has been in great form the last couple of seasons. Recently, when he's played for the national team, he scored goals pretty well. It's just what Josie can do outside of scoring goals, he does a lot better than Giaci Zardes does, and he scores goals better than he is too. I think Josie is just on another level than Giaci, and that's just the way it is. And even if Daryl DK does play well, could I say that we don't see if Josie Altador is fit and actually playing, does he get in over a likes of Jordan Sibachu? Does he get in over a Joe Aquini? I think he probably would. I think even if Daryl DK is bombing forward and you have those 3 center forwards, you got Josh Sargent, Daryl DK, Josie Altador. I wouldn't be shocked if that's what we have for a qualifying squad. And throughout qualifying, players are going to get injured. It's a long qualifying period. Obviously, you play 3 games, and then you have a couple weeks off, and then you play another 3. They're not all going to be available. So if Josie Altador is fit, there is a role, and he's going to have a spot. He's going to have a role to play or a voice to play. It's just whether or not he's going to be fit. But let's now talk about the guys who are actually in this squad. From that front 3, who do you think is going to be the front 3 that we see? Obviously, a lot of these players is going to be mixed around in the likes of those Haiti games, in the Martinique game. But when we start playing Canada and into the knockout stages, what is going to be that first choice front 3 that we see?
Yeah, it's it's interesting because there's not really like a nailed on right winger. I mean, I guess you could look to Matthew Hoppe, but really if there's competition at the striker position between Giaci and DK, I would love to see DK make it, but I think Gregg will probably look for Giaci in the bigger games, throw DK in. When
you think Paul Arriola is probably going to be nailed on as one of the wingers just because he and Jonathan Lewis are the only 2 pure wingers in this team?
Absolutely. I think Paul Arriola is going to be our nailed on left winger. Most likely, I think.
We could see Giaci pushed out wide. We've seen him play that role before too.
Yeah, where the questions come up, I think, is as right winger, whether we see maybe Giaci move out there, Lewis switch over to the other side, Hoppe over there. But
could you see us maybe switch to a front 2 maybe and play Daryl DK and maybe Matthew Hoppe up there and have Matthew Hoppe maybe drop a little bit deeper and almost play as a false nine and have that little 1-2 action and have him make runs off of the big guy, Daryl DK, like we've seen us play when Josie's been up top in the past. And then maybe drop and throw even Sebastian Lletget out on a wing and play with 4 midfielders or something along those lines.
Yeah, I could see Sebastian Lletget being a more attacking player, but I think most importantly is gonna be getting the most out of Paul Arriola, because he's probably on his day, I think he's probably the most fit and firing guy in that attacking group of players. So if we're able to get the most out of him, I think the front three will look good. So I mean, I would ultimately want to see him in the best position possible for him, which is not in a front two. And I mean, maybe it is in a midfield position on the wings, but I think we're gonna have to play with flying wingers going forward. So that just begs the question as who's gonna have to play kind of out of position out wide.
Real quick, before we get into score predictions and players to watch, stuff like that, real quick to end and wrap things up, I think it's worth mentioning that it looks like we're probably going to be losing Efrain Alvarez and Ao Akinola to Mexico and Canada respectively. We saw Akinola come in for a couple friendlies at the beginning of the year. He scored a goal in one of them. We've seen Alvarez in the squad for both Mexico and the U.S. They're both in their other eligible nation squads, and if they play, they'll be cap tied. Do you think it's the end of the world? I don't think it's the end of the world losing these two guys. There are a lot more guys that had dual nationalities that I would have been like, wow, that's really disappointing to lose. These guys are in crowded positions where we have even our best players in the player pool of similar age groups who are just on another level.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for how things were looking as of lately with, so many players going to Europe. I mean, Busio and Clark, and, I would be disappointed about losing a talented midfielder at the LA Galaxy, a young guy who's been a big promising player in the MLS for the Galaxy. I'd be disappointed, but fact of the matter is, as much as, I am a Galaxy fan, I love Efrain Alvarez. I think he's a good player. I'm not worried about him going the other way because we could have seen it coming. But I think ultimately we have better talent available anyway, and a better talent that's looking to bigger and better things. So yeah, I think even to talk about Akinola, I mean, look at
the biggest. Yeah, I think the biggest thing when you talk about Akinola is he makes Canada much better. I think obviously, and I think that's probably why he's making that decision, because he's going to walk into that Canada team and be one of their main options. He's going to be, whether that's starting or coming off the bench, he can cause issues. He's a young player. He's one of the better players, better young attacking players in MLS. But at the end of the day, he doesn't get into our best 11. Does he maybe get into a Gold Cup squad like this? Yes. But is he getting in over a Christian Pulisic, a Giaci Zardes, or not even, probably Giaci Zardes would be ahead of him. Does he get in over Gio Reyna, Josh Sargent? No. And that's just the way it is. And it's disappointing every time you lose talented young players like this. But like I said earlier, they're younger players who would be much more devastated if we'd lost as opposed to these guys.
Yeah, and you talk about him making Canada look better. I don't think he would make us look better because he just wouldn't be one of those.
He'd be another one of the guys.
Exactly. I mean, we talk about Giaci, we talk about Sebastian Soto, all these guys, different guys, Mueller, and I think he would just be in with that group. I mean, yet to kind of put a big stamp on things and step ahead of the pack. So, I mean, I don't think it's a big loss necessarily. I mean, he's undoubtedly going to have better opportunities in Canada to play with them. So I think it's a good move for him because he would not ultimately make us any better than we're looking already.
All right, let's refocus right on that Haiti game. Let's get score prediction right now and a player to watch.
Dude, I don't know. This can be a big one. This could be a high scoring game. But I really want to see a lot out of whoever plays striker, which I'm hoping it's Daryl DK. So I think DK's out there, I think he easily puts at least one or two past. So I'm going to go with a 4-1.
Wow, you think Haiti's going to score on us? Okay, I'm not giving Haiti that much respect. I'm going 6-0, 2 goals from Daryl DK. I think that's the guy we all want to see. Maybe Giaci comes in and poaches a goal in there. Matthew Hoppe, he's one of the players I really want to see. We saw what he did over in the Bundesliga, really exciting. So maybe he chips in with a goal here and there. Gianluca Busio, hopefully we get to see his debut. But I think Reggie Cannon and Sam Vines can be absolutely key in this, whipping crosses in to the strikers, because even if it's not DK up front, we know that Giaci's good in the air. Zardes is a big guy as well. So I think that's how we're going to see this game go. So I'm very confident going into this group stage. I think we're going to get 9 points out of 9. Maybe the Canada game is going to be the most exciting one. They could give us a run for their money. They're going to be the ones defensively that we're going to have to worry about, because they got Alphonso Davies, they have Kyle Larin, they have Ao Akinola, who can cause issues for us. But Martinique and Haiti, I think it's just going to be complete dominance. I think Jackson Ewell is going to shine. And yeah, I think we'll wipe the floor with them. So thank you guys for listening. Just make sure to check back for all the Gold Cup and transfer episodes we got coming up. Obviously, World Cup qualifying is going to start with Canada in September. So we got a ton of new stuff coming. Make sure to stay tuned. See you guys.
Peace.